big issue in my country, the Philippines. We've been growing really quite fast over the past 3 or so years, 7.2% in 2013 and 6.1% in 2014. But when we look at our unemployment, it has not really improved a lot. The more serious problem though is underemployment. It still remained double-digit.
First and foremost, we need to recognize that we have an urgent crisis on our hands, particularly when we're talking about the youth bulge, young people that are out of work. We need to make sure that we are creating enough good jobs, enough just jobs for our young people. It's not enough to say if we create economic growth that the jobs will come.
We have already suffered from this kind of situation where we didn't create jobs. We would just leave out of the country. So this is where we became the largest source for migrant workers within Southeast Asia. So we have 45 million migrant workers living in Thailand and Malaysia, and then also Singapore, and to earn income. So if we can't do that, they will become migrant workers.
Having jobs, is it only livelihood or is it about empowerment? Is it that the woman will only survive or will thrive?
What we're here today to do is to talk about jobs and how to create more and better jobs. And there is still the question of whether it can move people the next rung up firmly into the middle class.
I think some of the obstacles that we see and we know for the development of manufacturing or more generally export processing activity that is connected to the rest of the world are well known. We know that the region has enormous infrastructure deficits, there are shortages of power, that logistics are poor, that there is cumbersome regulation.
The first thing to me that's important is for us to identify in which segment of the global value chain can we position our industries. And knowing that, then we ask ourselves, what are the skills necessary in order for us to participate in that particular activity where we want to position our industries?
When you concentrate only on one sector, what ends up happening is that you end up having an overabundance of workers in that sector, which depresses wages and working conditions. So Vietnam, has, if you look at export volumes, we see that in Bangladesh, apparel and garments completely dominate. Whereas in Vietnam, we have telecom equipment and machinery exports that are equivalent to exports of apparel and garments. So diversification. So Dr. Zha, as you think about the strategy for Myanmar, diversification.
This has been our previous mistakes where everything has been set by the state without looking carefully into what are the market trends. So I think this is where we are paying a lot of attention to identify what are the value chains available for the country as a whole, and then trying to set our skills development strategy so that it can be sustainable for over the long term.
In the Philippines, we have a new industrial policy where foreign direct investments play an important element, an important role in terms of upgrading our industries as well as in creating more and better jobs. And bringing in new technology again would help in upgrading our industries. And in particular, we are focusing on the labor-intensive segments of the global value chains.
When we talk about productivity and efficiency, people tend to think of capital investments and technology alone. But actually, we also need to extend this concept of investing in people and investing in workers to increase productivity and efficiency. One of the best ways to do that is through skills training. We cannot develop our renewable energy sectors, we cannot develop our telecom sectors or our manufacturing sectors unless we have a skilled workforce that is able to supply labor for those jobs.
This is where I think the role of the state it's become very important to really help the citizens to use their freedom wisely. So I think this is where we are investing a lot in terms of human resource development strategies. This is where we are now setting up a kind of a natural resource fund that can tie to the human resource development, so that whatever that we can accumulate out of the natural resource revenues can be linked to the human resource development. So essentially we can replace the human resources to the natural resources in order to achieve the economic growth which can be inclusive and sustainable.
I think the skill training need to be very market oriented. Sometimes there are skill training which is the products people learn or technology they learn, but it's not selling.
The best skills policy that this stage I ever had was to put everyone to work, because you learn a lot through the factory job, you learn a lot through your work, you learn basic things like punctuality, reliability, teamwork. Those are very important skills. So the only point I will make is, let's not try to think that the skills challenge, and it's a big important challenge, will be solved just through vocational education and training. Our track record in vocational education and training is mixed. At best, things like getting every kid to primary school is a first priority. Moving up to secondary school, especially for manufacturing, is important. Having a good system of tertiary education for a country like Vietnam, moving into production of tablets and things like that, it is important. So let's not just think about vocational education and training.
Our research support helps countries to understand range of issues around quality of employment, about wages, about working conditions. Our research also targets particularly the most vulnerable, women, for example. Women's economic empowerment and entrepreneurship is a big area of focus. So we generate evidence base to understand the importance of the issue of both more jobs but also better jobs.
As a latecomer, we need to learn a lot from others. In that regard, I really like to thank the IDRC and the Just Jobs for providing us kind of a resources that we needed badly right now. For instance, like in our negotiations, and my think tank being the facilitator of these negotiations, we are being helped by the more far-sighted policies of the IDRCs and then the Just Jobs for helping us to have a kind of a knowledge and expertise to be able to help in this kind of situations. Because Myanmar is such a country where there are so many gaps. And the knowledge gap is one of the most difficult one to overcome. And then we are trying to get a lot of knowledge from outside to fill the gap.
Just Jobs, whose direction, whose main focus is also on the creation of more and better jobs, attaining inclusive growth. Same thing also is being promoted by the IDRC, being advocated for by the IDRC group. And that is very much aligned with what we are doing in the Philippines.
Ultimately, if I face domestic violence, if I face inequality, mentally I'm so tortured. And that is very important through Just Jobs and IDRC to raise the awareness that rights of workers, right of women need to be seen as a human rights and should be treated equally, and the employer and employee is a partnership.
What we actually need to focus on is coming up with employment-driven growth strategies, and that is where Just Jobs focuses a lot of its efforts. We are all about trying to find the ways that a job creation strategy would yield economic growth.